Yesterday on Daily Faceoff, Frank Seravalli dropped his first trade targets list of the season. It felt like Christmas morning for me. And of course, the first thing we do here at Oilers Nation is we dissect it and figure out which players could be fits for the Oilers. Frank, the first name on your list that I look at and go, that would be the dream target for the Oilers. In my opinion, it's Jonathan Toews. Is that a pipe dream or is that a realistic target for Ken Holland?
Not a pipe dream. I think a realistic target. And I think for Ken Holland and the Edmonton Oilers, ultimately at the end of the day, we've talked about this season and this team needing more punch in their bottom six, needing to get a little bit tougher, potentially maybe a piece here or there, but it's really still the center position that I think the Oilers are honed in on. And March 3rd is a long time away. You could see some changes pop up between now and then. But I think Jonathan Toews and the way that he's turned back the clock this year had a much better bounce back season. As you look at the top 5 trade targets that were on my board on Tuesday on Daily Faceoff, is that Toews is someone that has really gotten teams excited again. Think about how hard he was to play against. Think about how 8 years ago he was the talk of the Sochi Olympics in Russia as the Blackhawks were soon to become 3-time Stanley Cup champs. That he's someone that not only has the experience, but also has a little bit of edge and bite in his game that I think you could transform the Oilers lineup with him added to that group down the middle, give you so many different options if you're Jay Woodcroft. I think the big question is, would Jonathan Toews want to come to Edmonton? And it's a really interesting question. I don't know the answer to that, but I wonder if having someone like Duncan Keith in your organization to help tell you what it was like might help lay some of that groundwork at some point to give a team like the Oilers a leg up. But I could tell you, if the Oilers are interested in Jonathan Toews, that they would certainly not be alone. I think the Colorado Avalanche certainly would have their eyes set on Jonathan Toews as well, which might make for some tough competition to land a player like him, given that they won last year.
Yeah, and I mean, Toews, you mentioned his bounce back season here at the, in early October when we were just kind of talking about those two Blackhawks players. It was like, okay, Kane's going to get you a haul. And for Toews, that cap hit, considering the year he came off, I almost looked at it like Chicago's just going to try to get rid of the cap hit here, and he might get them like a second or a third round pick. But do you get the sense like the return might be significant now for Toews?
Well, significant enough that if you're the Oilers, you're in a spot where you'd certainly have to consider and weigh your futures with what you'd be getting back. But I think if you're the Blackhawks, you're sitting here going, yes, all these guys that we've sort of bet on, and not Jonathan Toews specifically being in the last year of his deal, but some other guys on our list, Andreas Athanasiou, Max Domi, they made some really smart bets to acquire some flippable assets. And Chicago, there's no doubt, is going to be one of the most active teams here as we get to March 3rd.
Vladislav Gavrikov is the next name on this list. Like I said yesterday on Oilers Nation Radio, that this Oilers team is more than one piece away. I don't think they can just add a centerman. I don't think they can just add a D-man. I think Ken Holland's got to do both. Gavrikov is the first D-man on your list that I kind of look at and go, okay, he feels like kind of Brett Kulak 2.0. Is that sort of the scouting report on Gavrikov, like a defensive D-man?
Defensive D-man probably doesn't move quite as well as Kulak. And so I agree with you stylistically that I think there's definitely room for a strong defender in Edmonton's lineup, someone that can kill plays, someone that can absorb the forecheck and not be rattled. I think that would be important. But I just wonder how they're going to make it all work cap-wise. Like, they'd have to stretch in order to try and find a way to make someone like Toews work, even at 25%. They don't have very much flexibility at all. And so that's certainly going to be a consideration that both asset-wise and salary cap-wise, they may only have one shot to take.
The next D-man on that list, Erik Karlsson. I'm not coming at this from an Oilers perspective at all, but I heard you today on Daily Faceoff Live talking about Erik Karlsson and the Leafs. There's no way, right?
Okay, so yes, I'm not absolutely crazy, but I think if you're the Leafs, the reason this all popped up is like, I was asked about it on Fan 590 on Tuesday night in Toronto, and I dismissed it totally out of hand. And I was like, this is batshit when you think about the Leafs already having 3 8-figure cap hits on their books, and people are already griping about how they have a lack of flexibility given that you've got Tavares and Matthews and Marner all with those ginormous cap hits. How could they possibly afford someone like Erik Karlsson, and how could it make sense for this team moving forward? But the realization that I came to is that if you're able to get Erik Karlsson to waive his no move, no trade to come to Toronto, and maybe someone like Jason Spezza, a close friend, could help who works in the Leafs front office, maybe you don't have to give up anything, or likely you don't have to give up anything in return to take on all 11 and a half. So you trade maybe a couple expiring contracts from your books, pick whoever it is that you'd see fit. You can make the argument Alex Kerfoot and Pierre Engvall, in addition to maybe a Jake Muzzin contract. And so you move those contracts off your books and you take all 11 and a half of Karlsson back. Is that better for the Leafs' future? Could you actually make the argument that with the salary cap going up, that you need your first round picks and you need guys like Matthew Nyes and Nick Robertson contributing on entry level deals, that maybe instead of using those assets to go out and pick a name from our top 6 defensemen that we listed as fits for the Leafs, Klingberg, for instance, with a high acquisition cost, or Jacob Chikrin with a high acquisition cost, that maybe that makes more sense to trade basically nothing and get someone like him in return, who's still quite clearly playing at an elite level. Man, it gets complicated. I think it's a total long shot, but I think it's at least worth going through the exercise to talk it through.
Karlsson's having, as we know, an incredible start to the year, and that's what's kind of fueling all of this. But if you were the Sharks, or if I was the Sharks, I should say, I'd be sitting there going, I almost want to wait till the summer when teams have a better idea of what their financials are. We have the answer to, is the cap going up 4.5 or not? Because if the cap jumps up 4.5, and Karlsson's coming off like a 90-point season or something crazy like that, and there are some teams with financial flexibility, maybe you could actually get a return for him in the summer. Whereas right now, like you said, you're basically just taking on a bunch of spare parts to get out of the money. If you're the Sharks, like, doesn't it make more sense to just hold them till the summer?
I don't think so. I mean, you're talking about a $40 million cash transaction that's off your books and the flexibility. I think if you have one team at any one moment in time, given his injury history, given the fact that he really didn't look very good the last few seasons, that you step up to the plate and you unload that contract if you can, and especially if you don't have to retain any money, because it would chew up one of your retained salary transactions. You only get 3, and it would do it for the next 4 years. Brent Burns is already locked in at 3. That doesn't leave you a lot of wiggle room, and I think there's no more valuable asset or commodity in today's NHL than cap space. And I think you'd have to just cut your losses and say, thanks for taking a chance to be a Shark.
Good point. Last area I want to hit on with you. It's a guy lower down your list. It's Ryan Reaves. We've heard a little bit, and you've been talking a lot over the last week about how the Oilers might be interested in adding some toughness to their lineup. And if you want toughness, well, Ryan Reaves is certainly tough. Is there a fit here between the two sides?
I could certainly see a stylistic fit. I think the bigger thing is cap-wise. How do you manage it? Because remember, we were just talking about how the Oilers and their cap situation don't have a ton of flexibility. No decision can be made in a vacuum. Like, Evander Kane's coming back at some point, February, March, whatever it is. You've got to account for that money. You can't go out and spend almost half of Kane's money on Ryan Reaves. By the way, I wonder if Reaves and Kane, what that would be like, throwing those two guys in the same room, given their history. That's an interesting thing to consider. But stylistically, I could see a fit there, given what the Oilers are after. We think, at least in terms of trying to, it's not brawn, muscle, toughness, anything like that I think the Oilers are in desperate need of. I think it's being difficult to play against. When you send your bottom 6 guys over the boards, that they're going to put up a fight. And I'm not talking drop the gloves fight. I'm talking be hard to play against, put some fear into the opponent. And right now, that group just doesn't do it.
Yeah, and Bradley McDonald, the listener, DM'd me last night on Twitter and was like, hey, everyone's talking about Reaves. Don't him and Kane absolutely hate each other? And it got me going, oh, yeah, I totally forgot. That was like a pretty substantial beef in the NHL for like a significant amount of time. I don't know if they've squashed it, Frank. Like that could almost be a non-starter. You don't want to drop that into your room. Those are two pretty like strong personalities. And if they're going to be butting heads, like maybe you just stay away from that.
As Ben Simmons said on his return to Philadelphia when asked if he talks to Joel Embiid still, he said, some people you just don't talk to.
No, well, fair enough. Thanksgiving coming up on your side of the border, your go-to Thanksgiving side, or what's your favorite part of the holiday?
Stuffing. I love Thanksgiving, one of my favorite holidays, but I look like mashed potatoes and gravy is a standard bearer, but I'm a big stuffing guy.
Perfect. My favorite part about American Thanksgiving is that there's NFL football on during a random Thursday up here in Canada. Go Bills. Anyways, Frank, appreciate your time today, man. We'll chat again next week.